Okay, the series that we've been in this Advent is the Will to Dream. And this series gets a special emphasis today. The notion of the prophetic imagination is that all of us who carry the message of Jesus are called to carry the dream and the hope that God is bringing about a preferred future for our world. The vision of new creation and God's redeeming of the world gets a new beginning in our passage for today and in tandem with our passage for last week. Last week, Caitlin did an amazing job, didn't she? Walter Brueggemann, who shared the theological framework of the prophetic imagination, who we've quoted, wrote this concerning the text that Caitlin shared from last week. He says, the Song of Mary, or the Magnificat in Luke 1, is about the unthinkable turn in human destinies when all seemed impossible. For with God, nothing is impossible, verse 37. The answering song of Zechariah is a song of new possibilities given late, but not too late. Possibilities of deliverance, forgiveness, mercy, light, peace. The old order had left nothing but enslavement, guilt, judgment, darkness, and hostility, and no one could see how that could ever change. It will not be explained, but sung. For the song penetrates even royal reason. The song releases energy that the king can neither generate nor prevent. The transformation is unmistakable. So we pick up on the heels of Mary's song with our passage today. I love the movie The Holiday. Have you guys seen the movie The Holiday? It's probably my all-time favorite Christmas movie. It follows the stories of two lost, heartbroken girls, Iris and Amanda, who swap homes for the holiday, one in England, one in California. And one of the things I love about it, apart from Jack Black's most endearing comedic act, is that the truth about who Iris and Amanda are becomes apparent as they live each other's lives, switching places. What seems true about each at the beginning gets clarity as their individual stories are told, intermingled with one another. This is much like what we get in Luke and in Matthew. While Luke tells the story of Mary rejoicing and praising God for God having chosen her and given her a son in her lowly spot, Matthew tells the story of Joseph getting the news that Mary, his betrothed, is pregnant and it's not his. Looks a little different through his eyes than it does through hers. But we get clarity about Mary when we hear Joseph's story. And we get clarity about Joseph when we hear Mary's story. So like Iris and Amanda give clarity to one another's stories, we're going to hear Joseph's side of this story to give clarity even to Mary's. Beginning in Matthew 1, verse 18. Now the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be pregnant from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to divorce her quietly. But just when he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Look, the virgin shall become pregnant and give birth to a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. When Joseph awoke from his sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took her as his wife, but had no marital relations with her until she had borne a son, and he named him Jesus. The word of the Lord. Matthew's gospel begins with, in verse 1, this is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. The word genealogy would have been immediately recognizable to readers as an equivalent to the Hebrew word for Genesis. Then again, in our text, The word that we translate for birth, for the birth of Jesus, is also the same word, Genesis. If you're still following me and not already thinking about your Christmas prime rib, Matthew intentionally suggests that the beginning of the life of Jesus is as much of a beginning as Genesis 1 was for the Hebrews. This story is the beginning of a new era, an all-new creation, which Joseph will quickly need to learn. Joseph finds out that Mary, the woman he's engaged to, is pregnant. Not an easy way to start a relationship. But he, being a good guy, sets his mind to quietly breaking off the marriage arrangement as to not disgrace her publicly. The Jewish and Roman customs for punishment for adultery required some kind of stiff consequences. They also required a lot of humiliation. But just when the good guy Joseph sets out to divorce Mary, an angel of the Lord appears to him in a dream. The angel tells him that the child in her body is a gift from the Holy Spirit, and that they're to name him Jesus, and that he's going to save the people from their sins. The angel quotes Isaiah 7:14, saying, "The child will be called Emmanuel, God is with us." When Joseph woke up from his dream, he did just as the angel had told him. He took Mary as his wife, and he named the boy Jesus. This is a stark difference from the joyful singing that accompanies Mary's learning of being pregnant. While Mary rejoices, Joseph reels, wondering what he should do. That is, until God speaks to him in a dream. While the tellings of these stories differ, we see a few primary things in common. First, Jesus gets his name in both. Now, Jesus is a common name for a Jewish boy, but that this Jesus would save the people from the sins, and that he would be the very presence of God with the people, is an entirely new thing to have heard. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid when you give him a name. Emmanuel, God with us. This very annunciation is the beginning of a new thing. And another commonality is that Joseph and Mary are both told, do not be afraid, apparently. It's pretty intimidating, raising the son, wherein God is going to redeem and save the world. Though they both appear to be afraid to receive such a big, daunting task. It's a task of prophetic imagination, which they both agree to take on. Finally, they're both resolved to do what God has asked, even in the midst of uncertainty, even in the midst of ridicule or social isolation. Mary and Joseph received the task of having to raise Jesus, the one that God said is going to save the world. I'd say that's a pretty brave thing to do. Think about the world in which Mary and Joseph are receiving this news. It's under Roman occupation. The temple's been weakened by its alliance to empire. Both Mary and Joseph are relatively poor. She's unmarried but has a kid. This news means public humiliation. It means the label of sinful for both of them. Who would have blamed them for crawling back into bed, telling the angel of the Lord, sorry, this is too much for a person like me. Give me a different dream. Yet Joseph and Mary choose to have courage and to proclaim that which is impossible may just be possible. In the face of all of the obstacles, they choose hope. Brueggemann says this concerning the type of hope those who are willing to dream have. Hope, on one hand, is an absurdity too embarrassing to speak about, for it flies in the face of all of those claims we have been told are facts. Hope is the refusal to accept the reading of reality, which is the majority opinion. And one does that only at great political and existential risk. On the other hand, hope is subversive, for it limits the grandiose pretension of the present, daring to announce that the present to which we all have made commitments is now called into question. Certainly, Joseph felt the weight of what Brueggemann is saying here. It would have felt absurd and embarrassing to deny the facts that seem to be with Mary. To take Mary as his wife and Jesus as his son would have been to refuse to accept the reading of reality, which was the majority opinion. Instead, Joseph chooses to love and care for Mary in the subversive hope that God might actually be doing something, that a new beginning, a Genesis, as Matthew says, is coming through this baby. Advent is our yearly reminder to act like Mary and Joseph. To even when the brokenness of the world presses in and seems hard to bear, the to-do lists get too long, the weight of meeting with relatives feels heavy, the weight of bearing the thought of a relative not being with us this Christmas seems impossible. Even when darkness seems all around and the future seems uncertain, to be like Mary and Joseph and choose to carry the hope that God is with us and will redeem the world that God created. To paraphrase Brueggemann, this is the prophetic imagination, that we nurture, nourish, and evoke consciousness and perception alternative to the consciousness and perception of the dominant culture around us. This is the calling of the people of God and the invitation of Christmas. The hope of Jesus is coming into the world. The worship team's going to come back up and we're going to sing another song. But I want to suggest that where we get the courage to have such hope, even in challenging times, is the same place that Mary found it. It's in doxology. Brueggemann writes of what he calls jingles, which I love the choice of that word, jingles. Jingles for Brueggemann are commercialized and shallow expressions of praise. I think this is often how we use worship around Christmas time. We sing jingle bells. And often, because of the fanfare of Christmas, Advent doesn't bring about great hope because we fill the holiday with jingles and happy thoughts, but we fail to fill it with a deep sense of praise, of adoration for what God is doing. And those are the things that accompany hope. Jingles produce good thoughts, but tepid hope. Doxology, real praise, ought to inspire a deep sense of hope that even in the midst of the dark and a challenging world, God is up to the work of salvation that God promised Mary and Joseph in our stories. So let's stand together and offer deep praise, not just jingles, that inspire prophetic hope that the life of Jesus offers.